Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Spits and Suds, a trade line edition of Spits and Suds on 105.3 The Fan. Our NHL insider, Sean Shapiro, is here to break it down from EP Ringside. You can find him on his Substack at Shap Shots. He's got a terrific book called We Win Here. You also read his stuff in D Magazine. Woo, Sean, before the end, we were just about to close up shop, and then a massive blockbuster just hit as a forward that we were not expecting, that were not on anyone's headlines as far as being traded. Thomas Hertl is heading to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, this is a big one, right? This is one of those where we're watching the deadline, things are going down, and it seems like it's been kind of not a slow day, but it seems like there hasn't been any of those wow factor moments or whatever you want to call it. And this is a huge one. I mean, Hurdle is a bona fide is a great player, signed for 7 more years, was on no one's list to really go anywhere. And now he's headed to Vegas, and Vegas does it in the same way Vegas deals with everything, where they go through and they throw the future to the wind for the present. You send out a first round pick in 2025, a third round pick in 2025, a third in 2027, and then they traded away their first round pick from 2023, David Edstrom, who's a fine prospect, but basically when you're picking 32nd, it's because you won the Stanley Cup. So they're the guy that they picked 32nd. This is a not groundbreaking, because Vegas was always going to be a cup contender, but you add this to the move earlier this week for Hannafin and Anthony Mantha, and you look at Vegas and you're like, this is like video game level stuff of how you mess around and try to build a team. Like, you look at that Vegas lineup right now and you go up and down it, and it's scary deep.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Darren Drager had this story first, and so I looked when he put it up on Twitter, and I'm going to read some tweets as far as the return for San Jose. That's it. The league is rigged. And another one says, oh, good, we got nothing. So I guess that says it all. I mean, they do get draft capital, which they can probably use, but you're right. I mean, you hate to say Vegas is playing with house money. That's a term that's used very often in Las Vegas. They built those casinos for a reason, but man, wow, this is an absolute monster of a trade. And I'll say this, good on Vegas for making the call. Either that or San Jose made the call to them. However, I love the trades that no one's talking about, or the players that no one's talking about, because to me, those are the most fascinating as far as how they started, why they started, and the creativity that's involved.
It is, yeah. It is like, everyone always has their list, right? You're like, oh, you could see this or we could see that.
Yes.
This is one of those that comes out of nowhere, and they're the ones that are the most fun, and B, the ones that make you. I know people, and I wrote about Vegas earlier this week, ironically enough, because people get a little bit. They've gone from the fun, plucky underdog story to the NHL's evil empire rather quickly. It is, but this is why they are the NHL's evil empire. This is why you're willing to think outside the box like this. You're willing to make these calls. You're willing to push the envelope like this, and this is one of those things with like Vegas. Like, you can dislike the Golden Knights, especially as a fan of another team in the Western Conference, but damn, you have to respect how they've gone about their business, because they push and they find and they do everything within legal rules to do it. And it's why they won a cup last year. And it's why, honestly, you look at it and you're like, now going into this year, like, it feels like the road goes through Vegas again. Even with them sitting technically in a wild card spot right now, it feels like the road goes through Vegas again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning, but We have to point out that Vegas also, once again acquired Noah Hannafin in a three-team trade with Calgary and the Flyers. Calgary receives a first-round pick, defenseman Daniil Miramonov, and a conditional third-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Philadelphia receives a fifth-round pick in the 2024 NHL draft. But really interesting because in star circles, when we were talking about Chris Tanev, the name Noah Hannafin was also brought up, playing a lot of minutes in Calgary, just a good, solid defenseman. And he's added to an already solid blue line for Vegas.
Yeah, like you go, like let me pull up. You look at this team right now, and you go and you look at Vegas's. You're gonna have Hannafin is going to. You're gonna have Hannafin with Petrangelo, McNabb with Theodore, Haig with White Cloud, and then you're gonna go and in the play like it's they just acquired um like Chandler Stevenson is right now going to drop to a third line role. You're gonna have just it is ridiculous, and they are going to. I don't know. I'm not sure. You don't crown anyone now or anything like that, but you look at this
Yeah.
Vegas team and you're like, who is going? They're going to grind anyone down in a 7 game series, and
Yeah.
you're like it's how are you going to beat that team 4 times out of 4 times in 7 games? It's a scary proposition.
No, you're absolutely right. And daily face-off, I love looking at it because they, project some defensive pairings, offensive pairings for different teams. So you're right. Hannafin and Petrangelo, Braden McNabb and Shea Theodore, and then the third line of Nicholas Haig and Zach Whitecloud, which is, two really good defensemen. So they are absolutely stacked. The other team I want to talk about are the other two teams before we get to why the Stars did not make more trades, because I think that's important to explain to Spits and Suds listeners. The Colorado Avalanche were extremely active as well, Sean, as well as the Winnipeg Jets making some moves.
Yeah, they kind of both added in 2 separate ways. Let's start with Colorado, because Colorado went and basically decided to kind of they decided that they were trying to get tougher, more physical. They're they went and got obviously they went and got Sean Walker, which is a bit surprising. But then at the same time flipped Bowen Byram for Casey Middlestat.
Yeah,
And,
really
and
good
it
trade for both.
exactly. And then at the same time also went and got Yakov Trenin from Nashville within the division. And like it was one of those where Colorado saw the arms race and went and said, okay, what do we need? We need a better second line center with a better attitude than Ryan Johansson, which they went and got. We need uh we're gonna they had to move Bowen Byram to get that done. So they needed to replace him and they did. And then they got a little bit tougher with Trennan, and then also on top of not a deadline move, but they're getting Val Nichushkin back tonight too out of the NHL Player Assistance Program. Colorado basically saw, I think, how and why Vegas won last year. Tough, physical, deep, a little bit deeper than the way Colorado won 2 years ago. And they said, we
Yeah.
needed to do that. We need to get in on that arms race. Winnipeg, at the same time, Winnipeg already had, I think, a bit of that depth and that physicalness, and they needed to add kind of that skill for those matchups. And Winnipeg bringing in Tyler Toffoli, that's a huge add where it
Big.
better slots their lineup, right? Like they're now probably gonna have a second line with Nikolai Ehlers and Sean Monahan, and it moves a guy like Alex Iafallo down in the lineup and everything like that. It is a everyone like the entire Central Division, almost the entire West got better today. It was fascinating to watch, see how it all unfolded, because um, at the same, you also had a bunch of these moves too, like go within the division. Like you this week, right? You had Nashville kind of acting as both a buyer and a seller at the same time, which was
Yeah.
really interesting. And it's like you like buckle up. This is going to be this is a gauntlet for the final 20 games of the regular season, and then the first round is going to be we're going to have 6 really really good teams, and two of them are going to have at least 2 of them are going to be going home in the first round, and that's wild.
Yeah, you
So
gave up a young Colorado gave up a young defenseman, but they got a young center who's improving every year. And Casey Middlestat is projected as a second line center. And as you mentioned, Nichushkin back, so that second line now all of a sudden becomes Druin, Middlestat, and Nichushkin. And Trennan, who they also acquired, Yakov Trennan, he moves to the third line with Ross Colton and Miles Wood. So I mean, they are 4 lines deep. And yeah, as you mentioned, defensively, really, really impressive. We know about Taves and McCarr, Gerard and Manson, and then to add Sean Walker with a veteran like Jack Johnson, pretty stacked defensively as well. So my fear is, Sean, from a star standpoint, because I know,
mhm.
that's, and I was thinking, like, because we'll answer some tweets that I
Yeah,
put out that people were asking about, but I think what it came down to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there always can be some creativity, but it's one thing when you're up against the cap, but when you don't have the flexibility to trade pieces that you want to keep for the future, because I always try to think, Sean, okay, if I'm the opposition, who do I want? And for everyone that, contacts you or I and says, well, give them Radek Fox or Yanni Hakanpää. I mean, who wants them?
yeah,
And I'm not saying that bad, but those are players that are getting older, that have contracts, that aren't performing to a point where it's like, hey, we can build our future. And that's what I loved about the Middlestat trade, because it was a good young player for a good young player. And it does bring up the point that you have brought up in the past with Spitz and Suds is I love Maverick Bork and I want Maverick Bork to be here for a long time, but I don't want to trade Wyatt Johnston, and players like that. At some point, maybe Jim Nill has to pull the trigger on one of those forwards to get a top 4 as far as a defenseman.
I will counter with and with the Stars too. I also bring this up, right? Okay, everyone's going to look at the other deadline moves and the build up and everything like that. I get that, and people, it's easy to get wrapped up in the arms race. Now, I would throw this back to you, Gavin, and anyone who, from a Stars perspective, what other deal? And I know people will be like, "Oh, Hannafin or
Yeah.
whatever." Like I know that, but like I
Yep.
know people are going to say that. Um, if I told you going into this season the Stars would add a player who has 8 points in 6 games before the deadline, you would be thrilled. That player is Logan Stankoven. The
Yeah.
Stars had like you have to look at Stankoven as a deadline acquisition, and B, you look around the league and the deals, and this is also a testament to how deep the Stars are. I don't know what else to be, and this is not me being overtly defending Jim Nill or whatever. They got Tanev. They they've let Stankoven run with it, and he's going to be on this team for the rest of the season now. I don't know what other move they could have made that actually makes them better and isn't just making a move for the sake of making a move. And I want
Yeah.
to be clear. I want to be clear on that. Like I think sometimes you make a move for the make of making a move, and the the Stars didn't do that. You didn't need to go and unless you were going to get Hannafin, unless you were going to get one of the and you already got one of the top D available in Tanev. Like to me, yes, I would have liked them to get another defenseman. That's okay. I don't think they needed to add a forward. I don't think they needed to do that. This team is still, like I say, who's going to beat Vegas in a 7-game series? I honestly still look at Dallas as the team that, like, they're still top 2 for me. Them and Vegas are still the top 2. Like, I look at this team as one of the top 2 teams out of the West. I think they're one of the few teams that can beat Vegas in a 7-game series. So I I know people always react to activity and they react to what other teams do and everything like that. But there's a reason sometimes that teams don't make moves, and there's a reason that sometimes teams don't kind of blow everything at the deadline because they have They already have the roster good enough to do it. Um, with Dallas, this one of the things about the Stars for me, and I hope I've said something of substance here. Yeah,
Of course you have.
one of the things about the Stars for me is there's like Jim No likes to say, I like where our team is at, and he's right this year. He's very right this year. You don't have you weren't going to make the same move as Vegas, and that's okay. This team is still good. This team can still win the Stanley Cup. Vegas is just going to be more of a challenge now than they were 4 hours ago, but it's still Vegas and Dallas to me are still right up there. So
Yeah.
it's tough to win. It is tough to win. So
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, I think Colorado, I'm worried about Colorado, Sean.
yeah,
I kind of have them up there as well. But we'll see. I guess it's going to depend on Gorgiev as far as how far he can get them. But I did like when we talk about what move. It's interesting, and I'm a chance taker, Sean, and I don't think they do this. But based on what happened, and you know where I'm going, based on what happened with Thomas Harley last year, I'm worried about that last line of defense with Hakanpää, and we saw it the other night against San Jose. I would love to see them give Bixel some games if he comes back in time and see where we're at with that and see if that can make a difference as far as, a guy that could fit in as a fifth or sixth defenseman.
you've been listening to David too much, haven't you?
Probably. Yes. That's a problem that I need to get over.
I Liam Bixel's not ready. Like I'm not. I am. I am not. I think Liam Bixel is a very good piece. I think he's close, but I think Liam Bixel made a huge mistake by going back to
Yeah.
Sweden. That's and made a huge mistake by going back to Sweden. He's been playing over there. I've watched some of his games and everything like that. He's been okay. He's been okay. He was and I think he is better suited for the AHL than the SHL. He should have stayed with the Texas Stars as opposed to goes into Rogala. Like to me, I just don't. And I know people like to get all like think youth is right away gonna fit in and everything like that. Like Liam Bixel was making mistakes with Texas. He's making mistakes with Rogala, and that's fine. He's still only 19 years old. I think he would be. I think if he had spent the entire season with Texas, he'd be ready. And I don't. I think that's a mistake the player made, and the Stars basically granted him his right to do that. And he's not better than he doesn't. Putting him on the Stars blue line right now to me does not make them better. Like it doesn't do it right now. Maybe this time next year. Hopefully, maybe going into training camp next year, you get time to do it. But it's you need time to grow. You need time to do it. And if he comes in and he plays in the NHL playoffs and is great, fine. I'll eat my words. I don't care. I don't think that is the right course of action. And it's it also goes back to if you're you're looking at Liam Bixel and you're going to bring him in and do that. I know this is something where someone's going to be like, I know there's someone's going to be listening right now and they're going to really stop listening right now because I'm about to say this. There is an importance to your makeup of your team, of the guys who got you there, the cohesion of that. You need to send the right message to that too. It's can I go off script here about Ryan Suter for a second, Gavin? Can I do that for a second?
No, this is your podcast today, bud.
So everyone thinks Pete DeBoer is the person not scratching Ryan Suter, right? People think like, oh, Pete DeBoer doesn't have the balls to scratch Ryan Suter. I see the quote, I see the messages about that or the tweets on that. Like, why does it Pete DeBoer scratch Ryan Suter? Scratching Ryan Suter is not a Pete DeBoer decision. Scratching Ryan Suter is a organizational, team-wide, GM down decision because Ryan Suter is when Ryan Suter doesn't get what he wants, Ryan Suter has been a locker room cancer in the past for Minnesota. That has happened before. That has been well reported from his time in Minnesota. Ryan Suter, when he's playing like he has basically graciously accepted the third pairing role as much as he had. And this is someone who, for right or wrong reasons, you basically need to keep him in the lineup. And if you lose him, if you scratch him, you start to do that, it sends the wrong message to the other veterans, all of that stuff. I know someone right now is not liking this. They just think it's hockey and it's just who cares who plays. But it does impact everything. I'm sure you can ask Luds next time he's on about the impact of a room on the playoffs and everything like that. You bring a 19-year-old kid in who decided his idea was better than the team. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying, Liam, but you bring in a 19-year-old kid who comes in and says my idea was better than what the team thought for me, and I control my own destiny. And now you're going to gift him NHL minutes and take out Ryan Suter or Yanni Hakanpää or even Nils Lundqvist, who are all well respected for everything they've done. You're going to send the wrong message to that group, and you're going to put that kid in a terrible spot. It's going to be awful for Liam Bixel if you do that. It is a disaster waiting to happen if you do that.
The month of March is always crazy busy. It's Jesse Watt, and why not schedule in some self-care time at Heyday Skincare? All month long, Heyday has a limited time offer where the first 200 new clients will receive a $70 facial. They have 2 convenient locations in River Oaks and a brand new beautiful spa in Bel Air. Once you try Heyday, you'll realize that they are one of a kind because they believe there is no such thing as one-size-fits-all skincare. Your skin is unique and deserves custom treatment. Their skin therapists create a personalized facial especially for you. If you're making your first appointment or you want to get a free $50 enhancement, use the code Houston965 at HeydaySkincare.com.
There's sports betting, and then there's Circa Las Vegas, an adults-only sports watching nirvana. Now you can watch up to 19 games at the world's largest sportsbook on a 78 million pixel, 3-story mega screen. Plus, it's always spectator season at America's largest pool amphitheater, Stadium Swim. Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year and features all sports on an epic 143-foot screen. Book your reservation at CircaLasVegas.com. Circa Las Vegas. This is sports the way it should be.
I hope that makes sense.
No, it certainly does. I guess my next thing is and this is probably like a May, June, or July, depending on when they finish. And hopefully we're talking about Stars moves in July because that means they took the cup. As far as potential buyouts in the future.
Yeah.
My point is this, Sean. I mean, just from a personal side, I really appreciate Jim Nill and Tom Ghilardi up against the cap because we take for granted sometimes about that. We talk about all the time like cap strapped, and I'm the one that says it can't be so cap strapped. But at the same time, recent memory would also tell us that we were at the bottom when the Stars were bankrupt. And I appreciate Ghilardi allowing the organization to go for it as far as salary. So kudos to the Stars organization for that. However, I would like to see heading into next year some cap flexibility, which would enable them to make some trade deadline, without a third party getting involved. Those kinds of things. The third thing I'll say is I understand, and you're right. I think they are a favorite in the West to move on. Vegas is going to be tough, and like I said, I think Colorado is going to be tough. But I love the fact that we still have Logan Stankoven in the organization, that Maverick Bourque's in the organization, that Liam Bixel's in the organization, and we have Chris Tanev. So we cannot discount that. And the Tanev move might be forgotten because it was last week. But the fact that Jim Nill in the last couple of years has brought in a Domi, has brought in a Dodonov, has brought in a defenseman like Tanev, and not used a first-round draft pick that they still have or those top prospects. I got to give stick tap for the organization for that. Whether they win the cup or not, they are protecting themselves for the future as well.
Yeah, they are. They are. And it's like I don't think the Stars have anything wrong at the deadline. Everyone, it's one of those where people are going to be like, oh, they didn't do enough because we saw Vegas and Colorado and Winnipeg being way more active. Well, Vegas and Colorado and Winnipeg had way more holes than Dallas. They had to be more active. It's that's something too, where it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing on this too. So the Stars did a lot of their work in the offseason. They went and they built this team so much better that time. They've done that. They've done it this way. I'm okay with where they are. I'm not overly panicking about other teams in the West making moves because I think at the end of the day, they are right there still. And that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how it plays out, but I'd be interested because, Sportsnet did an article about Tanev where he's quoted and said everyone's on the same page, that that's what he's been impressed about with this, his new Stars mates. It'd be interesting if he fits in like this, if he'd want to, sign here for a while, because when players do come here, they seem to be really comfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be. I thought his first game was against San Jose the other night, right? And it was a little bit of a weird one with the timing
Yeah.
of when he came in and everything like that. So, um, they'll be as he kind of gets a little more comfortable. We'll see what happens, but it's like he's exactly what they need, right? It's exactly what they need. So
Yeah. All right. One other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is, well, let me ask you first, Sean.
Yep.
Of the trades that happened in the NHL, was there one that you really liked, whether it was the team receiving a marquee player or a team getting assets in return? Was there something that stood out that you're like, that's a really good deal?
yeah, I there's a one trade I really like that a team didn't make. Actually, I think one of the best moves of today, aside obviously from Vegas, which we've been talking quite a bit about, was I really liked Seattle getting something done to re-sign Jordan Eberle instead of trading him. I think that's a move where it shows it shows to Seattle that hey, they're still looking at this window because they're still competitive. They might not make the playoffs this year, but they're still going to try and go for it. And I don't think them trading Eberle was going to get them something better than re-signing him for 2 years at a nice value they did. I think from a intrigue perspective, I'm actually quite intrigued for our old friend Dennis Gurianov getting moved to Philadelphia because he goes to a place where he was averaging more than a point per game with Milwaukee in the AHL. He goes to Philly, and I know John Tortorella gets ripped on a lot, but the way Philly attacks on the rush and the way they've been built this year, I think Dennis Gurianov is actually going to fit in really well in Philly and a kind of an interesting team. So those are some low key things. I love I think Carolina obviously going and getting
Yep.
both Gensel and taking
Kuznetsov.
and Kuznetsov. That's big. I think there's a lot of teams that did some nice work.
Yeah.
It was if you were buying this year, I think you did a pretty good job because the sellers really didn't get nearly enough for. Like, I mean, I see some of the deals where it's like that's all someone got, and I guess that was the market. And I'm not sure, like if you're like Zucker moves from Arizona to Nashville for nothing but a 6th-round pick.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, all right, that's fine, but I guess you got something for him. And if you're Arizona, it works with what you're trying to do in the long run, but that's not really much value. So
yeah. Same with the Dumba move.
Exactly. So I think a lot of teams got better.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I will say I just mentioned Nashville because they traded Trennan and then they traded for Gavin. What is Nashville doing?
Going for it, man.
But are they going for it? You trade you like I don't get what Nashville is doing. Like, and it goes all the way back to the offseason where they buy out they go and buy out Matt Duchene, and Matt Duchene comes to Dallas and is having a great year. And then you're like, oh well, okay, they're buying out Matt Duchene, they're trying to bottom out and everything. And then 2 days later, they go and sign Ryan O'Reilly. Like, and I don't get what Nashville is doing. Like, I'm watching what Barry Trotz is doing, and it's his first ever GM job and all that stuff. And it just feels so much like making moves for the sake of making moves. Like, are you trying to stay in the mushy middle? Or are you trying to move down? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, I don't get it.
I understand what you're saying, Sean. I think he and the rest of the Nashville organization they won't tell you this, but I think they're quite shocked where they stand right now. So that put them in a position. But you're right, even the O'Reilly, and it's like, okay, why'd you get rid of Duchene then?
Yeah.
And then, but you do look and it's like, well, Ryan O'Reilly's been really good for them.
And
So it's fascinating to me, like some of the moves, but at the same time, I think this winning streak completely caught them by surprise. And now they're just playing solid hockey. And as of yesterday, I think I looked, it was a 6 points difference as far as them falling out of the wild card. So, if they just maintain, they're a playoff team. And that's fascinating in itself, that you're in the first technical year of a rebuild and, new people in the organization, and you're in the playoffs.
and them and Philly are doing like the same thing, right?
Yes.
Where like Nashville is a team that I think Philly is one where Philly would not be in their spot if they were in the West, right? Philly is one that's kind of a hero of circumstance, where Nashville is at the same time you're like, oh, this is kind of wow, we are better than we thought. And at the same time, though, I still feel like Nashville's very far from being a Stanley Cup contender. Like Philly, at least I look at it and I see the plan, right? Like I see the plan with Philadelphia. Everything is built around the Matvei Michkov year. 2 years from now, when Matvei Michkov comes over, it's going to be just like when it's the whole goal is to build the way Minnesota built around Kaprizov. We're waiting for Kaprizov to come over, and then we're going to build around this. I see that with Philadelphia. I see what they're doing, and I think they're doing a really good job getting there. I with Nashville, it feels to me like, okay, you're building a team that's a tough, difficult out, but are you ever building a team that can win more than a round in the playoffs? And I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I'll tell you one of the and I think Carolina certainly got better, but I give credit to Pittsburgh, because I like what they got in return, because as you mentioned, teams were not necessarily giving up a lot. But to get Michael Bunting, who I like a lot, I think the guy's a grinder, and I think Pittsburgh kind of needs that. You were going to lose Gensel. So that contract was expiring. I think they couldn't come to an agreement. So if you were going to lose them, and then you got Bunting, you got 3 prospects, you got a conditional first, a conditional fifth. You do have to retain 25% of Gensel's contract for the rest of the year. But I actually thought Pittsburgh, for a player that most likely I think was leaving in July, I think they got a pretty good deal out of that.
yeah, I don't mind what they did there. I'm not as big of a
Bunting.
I'm not a huge Bunting fan. I think he's a
You're
good player.
anti-grinder. You're just
I'm not.
anti-grinder.
I'm not anti-grinder. I look at I look at Bunting, where I think Bunting is a very similar player to a Mason Marchment type, and Mason, it's one of those where I think he can be that type of player, can be part of a winning formula and solution and all that stuff, but I don't see them as their own driver, their own um, like we look at what Marchment does. Like I think Marchment's been unlocked this year because he's been allowed to run wild with Duchesne and Sagan throughout the year. It's not necessarily what Marchment's done. And that's how I kind of look at Bunting. And you brought that guy in, and that's great. And I like that what they did with the prospects, because at some point they have to pivot that window.
Yep.
And now, honestly, it's kind of funny to watch. It's going to be funny to watch the last 20 games and see if Pittsburgh, if Crosby drags this team into the playoffs by himself, because that seems to be it's kind of like the two conflicting forces in Pittsburgh, right? You have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin still pushing to keep this window alive, and at the same time, everyone knows at some point you have to pivot, right? It's a weird team. It's a weird team.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, absolutely. And finally, I did want to mention this, and I'm on an island when I say this. Oh God, we got to get to tweets too.
Yeah, we got
time. Number 4 on the Stars. I think he's really good, Sean, but I think he's struggling at times, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, because I watched him the other night against San Jose, and pucks can jump over sticks and stuff, but can't control the puck, causes a penalty, results in a San Jose goal. That happened again to him. That's why I want to see Tanev with him, because I want to see him on that strong side to let him flourish, because I don't know. I just don't think that we're seeing the Miro Heiskanen that we've seen in years past. And I wanted to get your thoughts, because I do feel like as a host, I'm on an island like this, because I am saying he's good, but I think I am allowed to say that I'm seeing not, I don't want to use the term regression, but I'm not seeing what I want to see as far as, we should still be continuing the climb in what Miro Heiskanen can be.
I mean, that's fair. I think he hasn't been as good this year. That's completely fair. I think he's earned that reputation right now of we kind of just expect he'll figure it all out before the playoffs, and maybe he will, maybe he won't. But I think he's earned that reputation, is why a lot of people are, myself included, have been less concerned about Miro Heiskanen. I think, but I don't think you're wrong in how you look at it. I think one of the other, like, he took a step forward last year offensively, and he has not been that same player this year offensively. And it was, I would hope bringing Tanev in, putting him on his strong side, kind of acts as a reset. And I mean, the other thing too, that's like, and this is just kind of like the reality of the, like, I don't know how healthy he is either, too. Like, I'm not making excuses, but the reality is, like, he did come off that injury. And we don't know exactly what it is because it's hockey, but we have obviously a good idea, having seen the highlight of how it happened, or the low light, whatever you want to call it. And I think there's also an element to that as well, where he's been overworked and he was hurt at the same time. So all of this is to say Miro Heiskanen needs to be better. And that's okay. It's okay to call that out. You're paid the big money to be better, so you be better. Like,
good, because I am not paid the big money to say it, so I felt alone on the island. So I'm glad you.
No, agree. Like it's okay. It's okay. It's fine to look at it and just acknowledge what's the truth. What the truth is here. Like Miro Heiskanen has not been as good as he has been in the past. I think Miro Heiskanen has a bit of that gamer mentality too, though, where I think there's a space where I think if you look at how things come playoff times, things will change, but maybe I'm overly reading into that. But I think it's the good thing about how the Stars are built is, and I think this is the reason it's been less of a story than people want to bring up, Gavin, is because the Stars are built so well where it feels weird that you're nitpicking about how well he's playing. I think that may be one of the reasons too.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right.
Listening to your favorite podcast? That's smart. Earning your degree online from Southern New Hampshire University? That's really smart. With 24/7 access to coursework, no set class times, and dedicated student support, you can go to school when and where it works for you. Low online tuition means you can even do it for less. And dedicated student support means we'll be with you from day one to graduation and beyond. Join a community of learners just like you. Go to snhu.edu today to start your free application.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Dive into Seafood Month at Taquerías Arandas and Arandas Seafood this Lent. Visit any Taquerías Arandas location for 30 times delicious shrimp at a special deal, or try our shrimp cocktail, seafood soup, or seafood tacos. Don't miss out. Head to Arandas Seafood off I-10 and Mercury, or Highway 249 between Belmont, North Houston and Fallbrook for a taste of the sea. Make this Lent unforgettable with the freshest catches and tantalizing flavors at Taquerías Arandas and Arandas Seafood. Check them out online at taqueriasarandas.com.
Let's go to your tweets. We asked about it yesterday. You guys brought a lot of questions, so thank you so much. Let's start with at Meyer, MAYUR_Patel_91. I say that because he went to Vanderbilt. He's a sports neurologist, a neuro sports trauma. I mean, Sean, we got someone smart listening. This is awesome.
Oh, geez. Oh, man.
All right. He says, Otter's still the long-term answer here for the playoffs this year and the future, but should we be seeing more of Wedgwood with Otter struggling this year, or let Otter keep playing almost every night to work the kinks out? Excellent question, Meyer.
I look at, say, what is Jake Andre at right now? Let me get the exact number. He is at games played so far for this season is right now he's at 40 games played. I am a big believer that you should be targeting 80 games played for your goalie, and playoffs and regular season combined. I think 75 to 80 is the number, so you avoid the playoff wall. And I think we saw Ottinger hit that playoff wall last year. And guess what? Jake Ottinger played 81 games last year. We saw a wall. I think if we assume if you're going to play into June and win a Stanley Cup, you're going to need your starting goalie to play about 25 games in the playoffs. I don't want him playing. I would like to see him probably capped out at 50 starts. I think that's my ideal vision of what Jake Ottinger has. And now that's almost going 1A, 1B for the rest of the season, because that's only 10 more starts in the regular season for Ottinger. But I think if the Stars want to look at this from a what's best case for them to win it all, I think Jake Ottinger and Scott Wedgwood should be a tandem for the rest of the regular season, so you can get Jake Ottinger those 25 best version of Jake Ottinger starts in the playoffs. That's my opinion on it.
Yep, I like it. Brian Tatum at Brian Tatum. Great show always. Don't the Stars owe it to themselves to see what Maverick Bourque can do at the NHL level before playoff time? I know there's not much space, but there wasn't for Stankoven either. Also, could get him a little experience before playoffs if he's needed.
I would call him up. I think it's the spot where you want to pick your spot so he has a chance to succeed, the way just like when you called Logan Stankoven up and he got a chance to play on a top line, on a top six line and everything like that. I would like to see him at least in the NHL, whether it's a cameo or actually a chance to win a job. I think it's something that you kind of owe it to yourself as an organization right now, and to do it sooner than later. Like, I don't want it to be one of those like little like giveaways at the end of the season where you have like, oh, it's the last game of the season and we have a minor league lineup. Like, I want to see what Bourque can bring right now, because he's been damn good down with Texas. Really good. And he has probably, depending on when, the longer he stands down there, I mean, Maverick Bourque is going to be your AHL MVP. He is going to win the AHL MVP award if he's not called up, if he's not called up soon. And he may still be called up if he gets called up. Logan Stankoven is going to win AHL Rookie of the Year probably, even though he's already probably played his last AHL game. By the way, Logan Stankoven was papered down to Texas today. I tweeted about this before the show. Logan Stankoven was papered down to Texas, so he is technically eligible for the AHL playoffs if Texas's season somehow lasts longer than Dallas, which seems unlikely. But onto Bourque, like, he's ready for the NHL. I would definitely do this. You got to be smart with it. After the deadline, you only get 4 non-emergency recalls, so you got to be careful and figure out exactly the best timing. But I want to see it now, and I want to see it tested before it's just like, hey, here's a last week of the season thing. Like, let's see it sooner than later.
Will Stankoven be tired because he had to get on a plane and then land in Texas and then go back to Anaheim for tonight's game? That's just a lot.
I it's just like, people know paper transaction means it only happened on paper, right?
It's so funny. It does, but every time he gets sent down, they just said, was sent down. I even wonder if they even tell the player.
They do. I mean, they have to, because his paycheck's affected by it, but it's still. But he's getting less money when it happens. But still, it is. Yes, it is.
Got it.
It's still like. Yeah.
All right, Oleg at Broleg. This is greatness. Remember when we traded for Ladislav Nagy? That was cool. That's it. I do remember that. That was for our darn first round pick.
That was a while ago, man.
That was a while ago. Actually, that was in 2006, 2007. He was having a pretty good year with Phoenix, 41 points in 55 games. His career with the Stars, 25 games, 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 points. So not that memorable, to give up a first round pick for, but I definitely remember the addition of Ladislav Nagy. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Just one of those stars all time names that just, you
Yeah.
remember. All right. Craig at Craig TX80. How about an off-season deep dive into the cap gymnastics teams play? The more I think I know about the cap, the further away I am from knowing how the cap actually works. For now, what are the checks on long-term injured reserve abuse? Does the NHL have an independent doctor who checks? That's a really, really good question, because there have probably, since the Tampa situation a few years back, there's been a lot of talk about LTIR and if they should change the rule, because it does allow people to hold players off until the playoffs where there's no cap. And then all of a sudden the player is completely healthy.
Yeah, it is checked. I mean, the other thing that it's something where there's not technically an independent doctor flying everywhere on things, but these things, the NHL checks these things and follows up on these things. One of the things that other people also have to realize too is this is not it's not something the NHLPA would allow either. It's not like this is like there's so many parties here that like players want to play. And it's like with Vegas, right? I know, like I wrote about Vegas this week and people will be like, "Oh, look at they're making injuries up." They like right now, Vegas right now is on the near the cut line for missing the playoffs. You think they really don't want Mark Stone playing? Just humor me. Like if you were to make up an injury, like you think you're going to make up an injury to your captain when you're and Gavin, we talk all the time about hockey guys in the room and everything like that. You think a guy who's a captain of an NHL team is going to willingly sit there on the sideline while his team is battling for playoff positioning? Like that's not happening. This is not like it is. It's Mark Stone is also a highly injured human. You go look at his career stats page. He has missed hundreds of games in his career because of injury.
Right.
It is. Right. So the league does check on these things. And the other thing is, and this is the thing that people are like, every team does it. You go look, there's 16 something teams right now that are using LTIR. The Dallas Stars are using LTIR with Evgeny Dadonov. It is common practice. Everyone does it. Vegas is just better at pushing the boundary and finding the loopholes and the timing of it than anyone else. And if anything, you should be mad at your own team and your own capologist for not doing the same thing.
Yes. All right. Aaron Thacker at Thackman. I understand when you talk about the defense in front of Otter, that means I was talking about it, Sean. But I have also seen a lot of savable goals this season. Are you concerned about Otter as we go down the stretch?
It's similar to the Miro Heiskanen thing, honestly. Mm-hmm. It's very much a player who has not been as good as he probably should be this year. And at the same time, I look at him and I expect a bit of a correction for the postseason. So is there concern? Yes, because I think there's healthy concern, but I'm not, other than working with the goalie coach and making sure his minutes are properly managed, like we talked a little bit earlier on this podcast, I'm not losing sleep over Jake Ottinger being in my goal and being in net for game one of the playoffs.
God, man, I am so with you. So I got in a Twitter debate the other night where people were saying, Gavin, you're wrong. And, because I have full confidence in Jake Ottinger.
Yeah.
So let me just jump on this pulpit for a second, Sean. Back in 2021, 2022, this goalie was 29-27 with a 2.97 goals against average. For the year, 66 games played. That was Connor Hellebuck. So I say that, a 9-10 save percentage, to say sometimes goalies can have down years, but when you look at the full picture, this is not a fly-by-night goalie. This is a guy who has proven himself. He's still young, but at the same time, I think you just have to trust in Jake. If it doesn't work out, that's one thing. but the track record has shown so far that he's a solid netminder and that he's been really good in the playoffs at times. So to me, when I look at players like Connor Hellebuck, Sean, you called him the best goalie in the world, and I completely agree. Sometimes you're going to have down seasons. So I'm not hitting the panic button when it comes to Jake Ottinger. My point was the defense is, though, I do feel as though teams get more high scoring, or what would the analytic be called? High grade chances as far as on Stars netminders.
Yeah, I mean, high danger chances, right?
Yeah, there you go.
You mean you think the Stars defense lets up more high danger chances, or
I just feel, but those are my eyes.
Yeah.
Analytics might tell me different.
Well, I look at the Stars defensively, and this is a team where it is structured where when you a lot of your offense is built on the rush, there is a give and take of you need a goalie to make high danger saves on the other end. So I think Jake Ottinger's numbers this year too are also a little bit of we get into echo chambers as hockey fans, and I hope this makes sense. So bear with me, everyone. We get into echo chambers as hockey fans, and we forget of what the rest of the league looks like. And right now, like Jake Ottinger's 895 save percentage, 899 save percentage, it's unacceptable. It's not good enough. It's not good enough for who he is or what it says. But the NHL average save percentage this year is .903. That is tied for the lowest it's been since the first year out of the lockout in 2005, 2006. And the level of NHL goaltending and the level is the average level of NHL goaltending save percentage is lower than it's been in 20 years. Finishing is higher than it's ever been before. And when you only focus on one team, and I think a lot of people, hockey fans, not just Stars fans in general, like you talk to hockey fans from all over the country, and really they pay attention to only their own team. And that's okay. It's a very regional sport, and that's okay, though. And you have those conversations, and people look at that save percentage, they're like, oh my God, he's awful. But then you look at other goalies across the league, and it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of normal right now. Other than what's happening with Connor Hellebuck, what's happening with Adin Hill behind that Vegas defense, right? This is kind of the norm in the NHL, and it's the skill of the game has never been higher. The defense is a little bit more the defense has been, the structure is not as good, and it happens more. And I think that's just a reality of where the game is at right now, more so than anything. I'll let you focus me on here right now, because this is what you're really
no, good absolutely. There was another person at Dart2284 just said thoughts on cap circumvention, i.e. what Vegas is doing. The only thing I'll say about that, because we talked about cap, is they're not doing anything wrong. The only thing I will say is that, Vegas in the off season, like for instance, after winning the cup, a player that had been with them since day one, Riley Smith, former Dallas Star.
Yeah.
They just basically let him go for nothing because they needed salary. So teams are very creative in who's paying what, and the Stars were creative when it came to TANF. It can catch up to you where you have to let players go. And maybe this offseason, who knows? Maybe the Stars say, a player that's under contract, whether it be a Radek Fox or somebody, maybe to get out of that cap constraint, they let someone go for a late round draft pick that might not turn into anything. So, cap circumvention is certainly there, but you also run into cap strap situations. And, I give a lot of credit to Vegas, Sean, because a lot of people are saying, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to Vegas? Because they are just cap limited, and they found their creative juices.
They are redefining, they are reinventing the wheel, actually. They actually are. They have willingly embraced that the futures don't matter.
Yes.
And, it's fine. And they've embraced that. And it's one of those where, remember 2 years ago, the reason Pete DeBoer is the coach of the Dallas Stars is because 2 years ago, they flew too close to the sun and they missed the playoffs.
Yes.
Pete DeBoer got the axe for it.
Right.
It's going to happen from time to time. There will be years that Vegas will miss the playoffs because of this approach. It will happen. But I don't think they will ever drop to the bottom. I don't think they will ever drop to the space where they are struggling to compete or whatever, because I think they will always be in it, and they've realized that the reality is, what's the point of the NHL draft? Is you need the NHL draft every once in a while. The Stars needed the luck with Miro Heiskanen and Jake Ottinger and Jason Robertson in 2007. You needed that. But if you take away all their other draft classes, it doesn't really matter. In a good draft year, you get 3 players. Vegas has taken that math and realized, okay, if a good year is 3 players, why do we really do this every year when we can go and trade for certain assets every single year and just keep trading and we always get this limitless currency that the league gives us in draft picks that we can just keep giving away to get actual players. What Vegas is doing is going to, I think they're going to do it forever. As long as this ownership group owns the team, they will continue to do this, and they will continue to be competitive. And that is the reality of it. And they've just decided, like someone, Stephen Ellis, tweeted the list of what happened with all of the Vegas first round picks, right? Since Vegas entered the league in 2008, since their 2017, when they had their first round pick, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 23, 7 years now. All 6 have been traded away. All 6 of the 7 have been traded away. The only first round pick that has not been traded away by the Vegas Golden Knights is Brendan Brisson. Brendan Brisson's father is Pat Brisson, who happens to be one of the biggest agents in the world. I don't think there's a coincidence there on that.
That is great.
So if Vegas has decided, like we always hear these teams like, oh, I can't part with a first round pick. I can't do this. I can't do that.
Right.
You know what? Vegas is celebrating the Stanley Cup right now and may win another one this year because they've gone with just Vegas has reinvented the wheel. Some other team, when they get an owner that is willing to have the chutzpah to do it as well, will do it too. But for now, they kind of are in a league of their own because they I don't see any other ownership group willing to copy that philosophy for whatever reason, because in hockey we get too caught up with, oh, anyone can get in when anyone can win. Well, Vegas has decided if we're going to be in, we want to be a contender. We're either as an all in or all out. So,
and that at the end of the day, Sean, is what people remember. They remember the Stanley Cup. They don't remember. And this is what I'm saying about like the Maverick Borks and the Stankovens. Obviously, I want to keep them because I'm very, very high on them. But let's look at 2018 in the Vegas Golden Knights, trading Nick Suzuki along with Thomas Tatar and a 2nd round pick to the Canadiens for Max Pacioretty. So Pacioretty came, played pretty good, but was injured and has really struggled with injuries. And Nick Suzuki's turned into a Montreal Canadian captain. And I think he's got, what has he got? 61 points in 63 games. So he's an absolute stud up in Montreal, but no one's talking about that in Vegas. They're talking about hoisting that cup.
Yeah. It's everyone, prospects come and go. Cups, banners hang forever, right? That's just the reality.
Well, Spits and Suds listeners, you know who doesn't come and go, despite being a major actor, despite, writing for Ringside, despite, a book called We Win Here. And if you want to hear a great podcast, earlier this week, we spoke to Stephen Reserve of 100 Degree Hockey. And that podcast is up on Spits and Suds. And we talked about the Texas Stars, a real in-depth look as far as the Stars prospects. I was a little surprised. He said that he wrote the book and just put Sean's name on it. That was a little shocking. But other than that, it was a great podcast. You are an absolute beast, my friend. People can find out how they can support Sean at Sean Shapiro. This has been an absolute blast talking trade deadline and everything on a Friday. Really appreciate you carving the time. And I think Stars fans will really appreciate and now understand the greater depth of NHL trade deadline day.
I appreciate it, Gavin. It's fun to get on here. And you know what? We're going to have a fun time with this podcast for the rest of the year too, because we always do. And as I've said on the show, the Stars are a cup contender. And I expect us to have lots of conversations about this because I feel like this team, even with these other moves today by their teams, this team is still one of the top cup contenders for me. So
yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. And that's Sean Shapiro. We'll have some Stars post-game shows coming up on Spits and Suds and a whole big week next week. Again, thank you once again for supporting Spits and Suds, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone.